Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's live learning teleclass. My name is Adam Homey. I'm the founder of HelpMyWebsiteSell.com and the Business Creators Institute, and I'm here to introduce workplace communication expert Skip Weisman. Skip Weisman, for those of you who are on this call today, you know he is the workplace communication expert, and he works with project managers, he works with executives, middle management, directors, department heads, anybody who has the responsibility of communicating with others. And he helps them master influence and leadership through communication. What we're here to talk about today is a topic that I know is on the minds of many people. This is something that is such a major issue in our workplaces today, in our projects today, that they make cartoons about it. And it's about how to run and participate in truly effective meetings where folks buy in, give their all, and get things done. I mean, let's face it, there are so many problems with meetings, whether you're a project manager, whether you're a workplace manager, an executive, or any type of leader, that anything having to do with meetings can be a drag. We find ourselves sitting around for hours and hours and hours. We're not getting anything done. And we're thinking, why are we even going through this exercise in some cases? So part of what we're going to cover here today is we're going to give you some insights on how to properly deliver and present on the topic at hand, to be heard and get your word in, to facilitate that discussion and decision-making so things actually get done. And there are a couple other things that Skip's going to share with us today. Plus, we're going to answer a few of your questions, and we're going to show you an opportunity to take all of this to the next level if you're ready to do so. So, Skip, I'd like to welcome you to our call today, and how are you doing this morning?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. It's been a wonderful day here. I'm real busy, though, working on a number of different projects, including the content for today's program. So.
Exactly, and I know that, between you and I, we've been talking. I know you're very busy getting together the workbooks and everything for the upcoming Communication Power for Leaders Masterclass, and I'm very excited about that.
Me too. It's going to be fun.
All right. So if it's all right with everybody here, let's just dive right in, because I know folks are here. They're looking to solve problems. They're looking to make things happen. So let's start at the beginning. Why does it seem like so many project meetings in the workplace quickly degenerate into something out of a Dilbert cartoon? Meaning, why are meetings so ineffective?
Yeah, it's amazing. Dilbert really resonates with so many people. It's a great question. Very simply, I think there's a very simple answer to this. It's because I think there's a belief that there just isn't enough time to prepare for meetings, so people don't. If you think about it, most people are kind of just lucky enough with all their overwhelm in the workplace. They're just lucky enough to get the meeting notice out, schedule the meeting room for the meeting, whether it be a WebEx meeting or a GoToMeeting or whatever, or they have to schedule a physical meeting room in their workplace. They got to get on the board and the chart or whatever and look ahead and look at calendars and what meeting room is available or not. And they may have enough time to create a generic agenda and throw that together, but mostly, and then they go into the meeting and they sort of just wing it. And so it really comes back to thinking there's not enough time to prepare effectively. I just came back from a 4-week tour where I'm delivering a similar training on what I call communication power for leaders, and I've done it in 4 different cities, and I did a full-day event in Saskatchewan, Canada. And at the end of these trainings, I've had dozens of people tell me that what they took away from that day program more than anything is that they realize they need to invest more time in preparing their communications on the front end. And this means whether it's a one-on-one conversation with somebody or a presentation to a team, or facilitating a meeting, they just say, I don't invest enough time in preparing. You've convinced me that I do. And Adam, there's a paradox here, and I can guarantee that if people learn the proper way to prepare for meetings, prepare their individual conversations, they'll save themselves hours and hours on the back end. Most people, I'm sure, have heard the phrase, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Yet when most people, when it comes to preparing for meetings or individual conversations, they ignore that and they forget it because of the pressures and the stresses that are right in front of them. And I can guarantee when we begin investing a little more time on the front end in preparation, it's going to save tons of time on the back end, and meetings will be more productive, and they may even be fun if you do it the right way without a whole lot of extra effort. And amazingly, people will want to attend your meetings over others because you show up you have your act together. And I do a lot of coaching and training with clients on this, and we're going to be investing a significant portion of time on this in this Communication Power for Leaders series that you talked about coming up in about 10 days, I guess.
Exactly. While we're on this topic here, I'm going to ask this question. Why do we still need meetings? Because wasn't all this virtual collaborative stuff like Basecamp and live chat and Skype and distance learning, all that, wasn't that supposed to do away with meetings at some point?
Well, yeah, that's interesting because I think people mistake those tools for the process and the purpose. And I don't know if anyone really truly expected we could ever do away with meetings, but if you think about it, those technology tools that you're mentioning are really just a different form of meeting. So a meeting can be many different things. A meeting isn't necessarily a large group of people. That's, I think, when we think of a meeting, in this context, I think people are coming here to this call because that's what they're thinking. They're thinking about the big conference room. You got a dozen or 18 people around the conference room table, and somebody's presenting and leading the meeting. May or may not have an agenda or whatever. But really, a meeting can also be just one-on-one. And so I think most people, when they think of meetings, at least in the context we're speaking about now, think of that larger group with 3 or more people, or upwards of a dozen or more. So even for those collaborative tools, if you go back to those collaborative tools that you're suggesting, we still need to prepare and do things the right way, making sure we have the right people in the meetings so they fulfill what we want them to be at the end. Now, that's a whole other discussion because oftentimes we're not clear on what we want the meeting to achieve at the end, which I'm going to talk about in a little while, I think. Now, there are a lot of reasons we still need meetings, and that basically comes down to various types of meetings that people can have. Meetings shouldn't just be looked at as a generic meeting to get people together. I mean, meetings, in addition to having an agenda, and I know, people are often hell-bent on the agenda, and I'm going to maybe give a contrarian point of view with that in a little while, but in addition to having an agenda, a meeting has to have first and foremost a purpose. And most people totally ignore the fact that meetings must have a purpose. So how many of you on this call, have you ever sat in a meeting and said, rolled your eyes, folded your arms, sat back and sighed and said, what is the purpose of this meeting? Where are we going? Right? You're sitting in this meeting and it seemed like, maybe you're just having a meeting to have a meeting because someone thought, well, it was time to do so, right? It really had no purpose. Nothing was accomplished except to waste anybody's time. And you walk away scratching your head saying, what was that all about? Why did I just waste the last 90 minutes? So if you think about things in those terms, if you know the purpose of the meeting, then you can identify the best form for the meeting, which goes back to investing time on the front end to assess, what your needs are. So, does your meeting need to be face-to-face or around a conference room table sitting down? Does your meeting need to be face-to-face, but can you do it with everybody standing up around a circle, so you can keep it short and sweet? That a lot of agile stuff in the project management world is coming to. Can you get what you need accomplished with a conference call or just a few people? And who are those few people? Who are those right people? Or can you use a collaborative tool like Basecamp or create a 3-way IM or Skype thing?
Right.
I think when you have the purpose, then you can look at, okay, what's the form, what's the format, what's the tools that will allow us to be most effective? And again, it all comes down to preparation and knowing the purpose, and then you can apply the right tool and the right format to achieving that purpose. And again, I don't think people invest the time to assess. And it doesn't take a long time. I'm just talking minutes. You want to invest hours in assessing this. It just takes a little bit of forethought. And so, in the upcoming teleclass that you're talking about in that series, I'm going to be providing attendees with a worksheet that they can use to determine the purpose of the meeting and identify the exact type of people who should be in the meeting and who must be invited, who must be expected to attend, and then who are the peripheral people that just need to be informed of the meeting output, but maybe not necessarily attend. And I think we could save a lot of time and angst with people if we just did a little assessment on this on the front end. I know people in the project management world probably have seen a worksheet like this that I'm talking about, but they're probably not using it. And whether you have it or not, or you've seen it or you thought about, you're probably going to want to participate in the discussion around that sort of workplace meeting assessment form.
I think that's I want to bring out one key point here. I think a lot of times what we see happen with meetings, now whether you're in an office setting or in a project management setting or whether you're in a virtual setting. In my business, I have a virtual business. I work out of a home office and I connect with people all over the world. I mean, Skip, you and I work together just about every day and we're 3 time zones apart, but because
Right.
of the technology, it's like we're right next to each other pretty much whenever we need to be or whenever we need to say, whenever, like just this morning we were chatting about something and I said, you know what, I think we need about a 10-minute chat on this. Let's do it this afternoon. That's a meeting when we think about it. Now, I have been in situations where I've been involved in projects, whether I was managing that project or whether I was a contributor to that project, because we all play our different roles depending on where we are at any given time. And
Right.
the thing that I really just never have had any interest or time for is the idea of having a meeting just so that everybody can report updates or those get-to-know-you meetings. My thought on a get-to-know-you meeting is if you want to get to know me, let's start doing things. Or if you want to get to know me, let's start doing business, and you'll get to know me, and I'll get to know you. I mean, that's kind of my approach to that all along. So I mean, yeah, it's great that we all get to know each other and everything, but at the same time, I really don't have a whole lot of patience myself for those types of meetings where we just kind of go around the room and we narrate everything and all that. If I can just interject very briefly here, back in the day, I was the president of my local chapter of the American Society for Training and Development. I was the president of that chapter, the chairman of the board, and I had been on that board for 3 years leading up to my election as president, and my biggest gripe about the meetings of the board, which happened every month, up to that point, my biggest gripe was, it seems like we're spending a lot of time with people explaining, just talking about, I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this. So when I became president, what I said was, here's how we're going to do things. 72 hours before the meeting, or earlier, but by that time, I need you to submit me a summary of 3 things. The first thing is what have you been doing? The second thing is where do you need our support? And the third thing is what ideas do you have for taking this organization, moving it forward, taking it to the next level? I need those 3 things. And some folks latched right onto it, but others said, why should I have to submit this in advance? And I said, because I want to get you home on time. You guys, we all work full-time jobs, and we're doing this in an evening when we'd rather be home with our families. I'm getting us out of here on time, and I'm making this a more productive meeting. And so I capped this by saying, the way this works is those who submit their summaries in advance will speak first. Those who don't submit their summaries will speak if there's time.
Right.
It's how I did that. So that's exactly how I did it. Those who submitted their summaries, and it turned out it was a 90-minute meeting. We seemed to have just enough time for the people who submitted those summaries. And then 7:30 it was time for the meeting to end. I said, it's been a great meeting, guys. Adjourned.
Right.
And those who hadn't submitted their summaries were like, what? What about me? And I said, well, you didn't submit a summary. I guess you're not up to much.
Right.
I got those summaries every single time the rest of my term, and it was great because we actually came up with strategies. We increased our attendance at the monthly chapter meetings. We got our revenues and we got our dues up, and we brought in a whole lot of new technology because instead of gabbing about what we were doing, we were talking about where we were going.
Right, and it also, because if you force those people to come prepared to the meeting to present with their thoughts already in place. How many times do people show up and just ramble somewhat incoherently sometimes or not focused and they get off track or whatever? You ask them to prepare in advance and bring that presentation. And I don't know what you expected out of it, but what I would even say is, I want bullet points from you. I don't want, the long 3-page paragraphs. I just want 3 bullet points here, 3 bullet points there, or whatever, and be succinct. And when you do that, you start teaching people and training and coaching people how to present in these meetings and what your expectations are. That's an absolute outstanding strategy, and I commend you for bringing that up early on in your career.
Yep, and actually, I left that out on the table for you because I knew you'd pick it up. One of the objections I got to the summaries was, well, I don't have time to type out a document and do all this. And I said, I didn't ask you to type out a document. I asked you to tell me what you're up to, tell me where you need the board support, and tell me your ideas for moving the chapter forward. This can be one sentence each. It can be bullet points. It doesn't even have to be complete sentences. You don't even have to worry about grammar as long as somebody can read it. Just jot it down. Let us know what you're doing, what support you need, and what ideas you have for moving the chapter forward. That's it. You don't need to do a dissertation. And they said, cool. And one funny thing I noticed, Skip, is as we went through the year of my term, those summaries kept getting more and more concise, but it seemed like we were getting a lot more information.
Yeah, because people know, they start learning, they start seeing how others are presenting, and they just get more clear. They add so much clarity to the person's role and how they're contributing, and it should have made the meetings much more enjoyable, and getting people to show up, stay focused, and keep things moving forward.
Right, because they don't have to just sit there and listen. It was more engaging. Now, for our audience, I think there's something else I'd like to bring up here. You and I spoke about this the other day, and I think it would be helpful if they understood the word meeting in and of itself is just too broad. Now, you've already spoken about, a meeting is more than just a bunch of people gathered around a table. It could be 3 people. It could be an impromptu Skype chat. It could be a lot of things. Anywhere where you have a group of people or a pair of people who are discussing something that's meant to move something forward. But you also shared with me a little bit about different kinds of meetings and the roles that they play. And I think that a failure to understand these 2 different kinds of meetings is what leads to a lot of meetings feeling irrelevant and feeling boring.
Yeah, I think if people take nothing else away from this call, and we've already given them a bunch, especially your last tip was phenomenal, I really want people to focus on the purpose of the meeting. And so every meeting should have a purpose. Now I've jotted down 8 different types of meetings. There might be others that we can create, whatever it is. People on the call might have some other things that we can add to this list. Doesn't matter. Let's make a list as big as possible, because the more specific the meeting purpose is, I think the better, because it really refines people's thought processes and how they can prepare and what they can bring. First type of meeting, it was just information gathering. I do a lot of that because I do a lot of focus group work with my clients to find out what people are feeling about and thinking about in the work environment, what they want to, what they want different and better. And so it's just information gathering. Then you got information distribution, where you're reporting out stuff. All right, that's one on a specific topic. Feedback and debriefing meetings, sort of like you've done a project or you just completed an event and you're doing an after-action review session and you're debriefing. Then you have a decision-making meeting. We're coming together, the 6 of us, we need to make a decision on X. All right, and that's the purpose of the meeting. Or you're problem solving. Something came up, we need to have a problem solving meeting, and so that's what that's for. Maybe you have a brainstorming meeting. You're just trying to get ideas and get creative, create some innovation around certain ideas, so you have a brainstorming meeting. The meeting that you don't like, that I'm going to mention here, is the sort of the ice-breaking, get-to-know-you team-building meeting. Right? I think your biggest problem, though, with that is oftentimes you try and do too many of these things all in accordance with that ice-breaking team building meeting, and so it's too much. And then the last one I threw in here is just a planning meeting. What happens too often in all these type of meetings end up getting rolled into one, or you have multiple purpose meetings, and that's where things get off track. And it's not done maliciously. I just think it's sort of we don't plan accordingly, and we don't know what the purpose of the meeting is. It'll be much easier to get your people engaged, to get them to pay attention, to come prepared, if they know the specific purpose of the meeting and what their role is in that meeting and that process. So what happens is, these type of meetings get off track. The meeting facilitator, or the person, quote, running the meeting, is a poor facilitator and meeting leader, and he or she will allow other people to hijack conversations. And the issues sort of morph into something else. The meeting gets away from everyone, as does the time, right? And so we've all been in those things. So the more clear you can be on the purpose of the meeting and why you're getting together, it'll also allow you to decide who really needs to be in that meeting. How many times have you been in a meeting where you didn't really know why you were there? And that's why people sort of lose interest. They start checking out. So in the upcoming training, actually, I'm going to be offering some specific examples, even more than this, on how meeting facilitators can manage those situations to keep meetings on track and move meetings forward, to fulfill its purpose. And I believe it's even more important than getting through an agenda. So what I'm going to suggest to people, I'm going to recommend that if you only had enough time to either put together an agenda for the meeting or invest time in identifying the meeting's purpose, I would tell you to choose to spend that time, invest that time on identifying the purpose of the meeting. Because once you have the purpose of the meeting, it will allow you to easily move through and guide the discussion with focus towards the end result to achieve that purpose. You may not even need an agenda. So focus on the purpose of the meeting and not so much about just getting through an agenda, because that's really, I think, where things get off track.
Yeah, back when I was in corporate, I remember having to sit through these 90-minute meetings where my part of the meeting lasted about 90 seconds. You had 35 people sitting around this giant conference table, and everybody's taking their turn, and I have about 90 seconds worth of something to say. And it seemed like my segment was always scheduled at the very end, and I kept asking, why am I here? What's wrong with this picture? What's going on here? And it was to the point where I knew just enough about career survival to know not to go to my director and say, is there any chance they could tell me when mine's scheduled and I could show up just for that? But that was really what was going through my mind, because I'm thinking of 87 minutes worth of I could actually be generating value for this company that was being frittered away while I was just listening to things from completely different departments, and I could not for the life of me create a correlation between what they were talking about and what I did.
Right, and you had no need to know those other things. You were just there to report on your small piece and only needed, whatever small sliver of time you needed to, to present that information. And you think about what were you doing? How focused were you on the other stuff going on? You were probably distracted thinking about other stuff, maybe writing notes about what you needed to do after you left the meeting or got back, or make your laundry list or whatever. And so that's why people get off track, because again, it comes back to preparation and purpose. Who needs to be there to fulfill the purpose? If the meeting planner and you had spent some time on the front end discussing what was needed from you and when you could have then scheduled things a little bit more appropriately, and it would have made them look better and have a more effective meeting. There's many different ways to do this. As you mentioned, you could have presented early in the meeting, took questions, and left. If the rest of the meeting agenda didn't have relevance for you, right? Or you could have been scheduled to come in later to deliver what you needed at the appropriate time, or you could have just been in a conference room across the hallway doing your work. And then waited till you were needed, and they came and got you when you were ready. So there's different ways to to approach things if people are doing the preparation and are clear on the purpose of the meeting and who needs to be there to fulfill that purpose. So I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but I keep coming back to the fundamentals. Spending 20 years in professional baseball, I saw a lot of ball players come and go. I saw what people might call can't miss major league prospects miss.
Right.
And I saw some guys that, never were expected to get out of single A baseball, spend a 10-year career in the major leagues. And the difference is the fundamentals and how they showed up every day, because at the professional baseball level, the talent is razor thin difference. And it comes down to preparation, working the fundamentals, and showing up every day to do their fundamental work that nobody likes to do, right? So that's why I harp on the fundamentals. And meeting fundamentals is preparation and purpose. If you think about it, the reason so many people waste so much time in meetings is because the purpose is vague, or worse, it's so overarching and it tries to accomplish way too much. So in order to accomplish all this, well, then obviously everybody needs to be in the meeting because we're trying to accomplish so much. So everyone's invited. Yet, just like your situation, they only need to be there for a small portion of it. So while all this other information is being shared that you don't really care about, you're pulling out your smartphone, you're texting, you're making lists, you're having side conversations. And and you need to do that because you have other stuff you got to get done. And this is 60, 45 minutes, whatever it is, that's being sucked away from you. So you're trying to multitask in the meeting, and the meeting planner is now beside himself or herself thinking you're being disrespectful, you're not paying attention, when in reality you really don't need to be there. So we got a couple of questions, I think, from attendees that were submitted in advance about how do you keep meetings on track, how do you get people engaged in the meetings.
Right.
This is how you do it. It comes back to the preparation. So this is a dysfunctional way to run meetings. If you're not prepared, people are going to be distracted. They're going to be looking at doing other things. And I think we have to be empathetic to others and compassionate, and only have them in meetings that they really need to be in, or when they need to be in it.
Right. And I think the other side of that, and I think part of the reason I just keep thinking of this quarterly meeting I had to attend where I only had 3 minutes worth of participation, it was always at the very end. I think this was somebody's forward-looking way. They were thinking, you know what, we want to include as many people, and we want people to feel like they belong. But the thing is, I already felt like I belong. I felt like within what I was doing in that organization, I felt like I was making a huge difference, and my bosses were telling me so. I was very satisfied with what I was doing. I didn't really feel I needed to hear all these conversations about things about other departments. I felt that if those departments needed something from me, they knew my email address, they knew where my cubicle was, walk up, say hello, and engage me, was my thought. And as far as my report on what was going on with out-of-network behavioral health cases, that's a summary. I had already submitted the summary, so why did I have to be there to read the summary?
You make a very important point that I wasn't even thinking about for our call today that I think is important to touch on, because some meeting planners or leaders in organizations or team leaders or whatever have this, and I had it too when I was first leading my teams, a need to be liked. And I want to make sure everybody on my team likes me and feels good about me. And so I don't want to upset the apple cart or upset anybody. And I know I've had other people that I didn't invite to a meeting that we were having, and so they were upset about it. So just to cover my bases, I'm going to invite everybody to the meeting. Mm-hmm. It's easier for me to do that than to have the one-on-one conversation, say, Adam, we're having this meeting, I'm not going to invite you, and here's why, or I'm just going to invite you to come to the very end to do your presentation, and here's why, which goes back to having that one-on-one candid conversation with somebody to let them know where they stand, what their role is, and why they're important, and how they can contribute in their own way. And so I'm actually doing you a favor by not inviting you to this meeting, and I just want to let you know that. It's not that I'm dissing you or I don't think you're important or you don't need to be with the rest of the team. We don't have those one-on-one candid conversations, and that comes back to our level of self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-worth, because if it's too low, I have a need to feel liked, and so I want to make sure everybody likes me, so I'm going to invite them to the meeting, and they're inviting people to meetings they don't need to be at, they become bored, and they don't like you for that too. So it's a lose-lose situation. Yeah. And we don't realize that we're putting ourselves in that, in that bind. And so that self-esteem, self-confidence, self-talk, self-communication thing that we're going to be talking about in this upcoming Communication Power for Leaders thing even fits into this meeting thing that I didn't even realize until we started talking about it.
Well, tell you what, and I'll be candid with you, Skip. That's another one I left on the table for you as well, just knowing you'd pick it up, because you have this level of insight where when people share their issues with you, you just have this unique ability that I've experienced through 5 years of having you as a client and having you as a friend and as a mutual supporter in the workplace and the environment, in the business environment, that when people don't get invited to meetings, I mean, the person who organized this huge meeting where you have 35 people in a room might have been thinking, that stuff that Adam does with out-of-network providers is peripherally involved with what we do in care management. If we don't extend an invitation to him, then he might feel like we just use him when we need him, that we don't care about his input or anything like that, or we're not giving him the opportunity to learn our issues when it comes to out-of-network cases. And now, so it is kind of a push and pull, and there are some judgment calls. So what comes to mind, and I just want to get your thought on this before we throw in a couple of participant questions here real quick, is what about the person's role in the meeting? Because when I think about this, the more I talk this out loud, and I kept this example because I knew we could dive into this for the benefit of our audience a little bit, is what if that type of meeting had a core group and an observer group? So you have a handful of people who are, let's say, the main people around the table. They're the ones whose issues are really the driving force of the meeting, like what are trends with enrollment and care management or whatever, something like that. But they're also like an observer level or an optional observer level or something like that for those like me whose role may peripherally need that information, where if I look at myself and I say, hey, you know what? I think if I could just hear what these care managers are talking about, I might get a better understanding of this out-of-network stuff. Or I might say, you know what, I think I got it here. Or I actually have something that's more productive I need to do right now, where if I bow out of the meeting, there's no question of my status. There's no insult to the people if I don't show up. But if I do show up, then it works for everybody. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think it all comes back to understanding people's roles and offering them the opportunity to participate and contribute in whatever way. And giving people flexibility is really, really important. And but it comes back to having that candid one-on-one conversation, and sort of at times it can be sort of a negotiation as to what happens and why do I need to be there, why do I not need to be there, what's the best use of my time, and how can I add value. And so I think, again, it comes back to, instead of just making assumptions, and Lord knows there's enough assumptions going on in our interpersonal communication with in the workplace, having that conversation and just being open to the possibilities, and just fleshing out what's the best for everybody, and making people feel heard, feel valued, and not forcing anybody to do anything, and creating
Right.
a thing that works for best, and trying to create as much autonomy, much flexibility for people, but deciding what the role is and what the value is, and having an upfront discussion about it, so they can feel they're in the right place and they contribute where it makes sense instead of being forced to. Absolutely, I think it's a great strategy.
Okay, great. I just wanted to throw that out as a potential thought, and I also just wanted to give our audience a benefit of seeing what your coaching feels like, because I think this is something that's very important, that we know how our mentors can best support us. Mm-hmm. So just a couple questions here from the audience. I want to, you've already just through your presentation answered a good bit of folks, and I hope to capture some of the gaps here real quick. So I'm going to pull up a question from let's see here. Okay, here's a good one. This is from Claude in Canberra, and Claude wants to know about controlling what we like to call the alpha participants. In other words, I think what he's saying is the folks who just dominate the room, and how do we politely keep the meetings on track and on the agenda without it getting pulled towards the dominant personalities?
There's a couple of things you can do depending on history, I guess. If it's the first meeting and you're just experiencing this with people, it takes a strong facilitator. It takes a strong facilitator with a strong level of self-esteem and self-confidence, because this alpha person around the table is obviously a strong personality, and that's where we have to really step up. And so if it's a surprise and we're not aware of this person until we get in there and nobody's warned us about it or whatever, we have to really be alert and paying attention as to how things are going and where it's going, and recognize it as quick as possible. Sometimes it's easier to do than others. If you really see it going off track, you need to just politely sort of raise your hand and say, "Excuse me," as soon as you can get a word in edgewise, or he takes a breath. "Excuse me, Claude, what you're saying is really important, right? I am somewhat concerned, though, that it's slightly off topic and taking us down a path that's going to take us beyond the time that we have. Can we put that in a parking lot, and you put it on a flip sheet of paper as to what he's talking about, and you promise to either A, come back to it later in the meeting if we have time, or B, schedule another meeting, either one-on-one or another session. This is so important, we need to have a separate meeting for this." Right, so you validate his concern, his participation, and just remind him that it's kind of getting us off topic, and we need to get back to respect everybody's time, including yours. So let's just park it for later, and then you have to revisit it. You have to either get back to it at the end of the meeting if there's time, or get to him after the meeting and say, hey, let's schedule some time to talk about this and move on. If it's a really strong personality, it's going to be challenging at first to do that, and it's really the only way. You got to find the right time to interrupt. Say, excuse me, Claude, I need to just remind you. Now, that's one way to do it. The other thing you can do is you can throw it out to the group, because it may be such an important point. And so, Claude, hold on for a second. I just want to take the pulse of the room, because what you're saying I think is really important. I'm not sure if it's something we should invest time in here. Let's see what the group thinks. Group, would you like to invest more time in this right now to flush this out, or should we schedule another time? And you get the group sort of decide. So there's different ways to do that in the moment in that situation. The other thing you can do, if this is historical and you know this guy does it every time, you've got to deal with it in your preparation phase and go talk to him and make sure he understands the role, the purpose of the meeting, and create an appropriate role for him to contribute where it makes sense. And so you've got to really brief him on what your expectations are ahead of time, so you nip it in the bud.
Okay. Now, what I'd like to do here is I think we have time for one more really good question. This is going to be from Barbara Viney. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Barbara Viney in Washington, D.C. And Barbara wants to know, what are the tactics for preventing sidebar conversations or bringing folks back into the meeting from sidebars? Now, before you answer that, I'd actually like to add one more element to that, because I think it kind of goes hand in hand. So let's say you have a bunch of people in the meeting and you kind of see them starting to whisper to and from themselves, or you start to see somebody thumbing their smartphone and you can tell that they are more engaged with what they see on their Android or their iPhone than what's going on in the room right now. How can we sort of prevent this, or how can we sort of keep the focus in the room?
Yeah, great question. I think we touched on it earlier a little bit. First of all, it comes back to preparation, and making sure the right people are in the room, for the meeting. So I think that's vitally important. In my trainings that I do, and I'm sure we'll touch on this in the Communication Power for Leaders training, I say if people aren't paying attention to you, whether in front of the room or side of the room or one-on-one, it's not their fault. It's your fault for one of two reasons. You're either not demanding their attention, or you're not commanding their attention. And by demanding, I don't mean that you're beating them over the head. Adam, you got to listen to me right now, because I'm the boss.
It's like Adam, put the smartphone down. That's rude.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What you want to do is you just want to say, Adam, this is what we're talking about right now is really important. So I need your full attention for the next 5 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever.
Right.
And so you have to demand their attention in that moment. So at the beginning of the meeting, you really say, we need people to be really focused. Please put your smartphones or whatever, into a basket when you come in, or make sure they're all turned off. We're not going to accept any distractions with smartphones. We will take a break midway through, 30 minutes or 45 minutes. If you need a 5-10 minute, email check-in break, you can set that up.
Right.
Do it. So one is you're not demanding their attention, again, in a respectful way and asking for it, really, but demanding, and is kind of my way of getting people's attention there. And the other thing is commanding their attention. And commanding their attention is being engaging, having a topic that's important, delivering it, running a meeting effectively with preparation, with purpose. If you run those meetings the right way and you set it up the right way, you're commanding their attention because they want to be there for all the right reasons. So those are two ways, just at the very beginning, to do it. And again, if people are doing it in the meeting, you have to find out why, maybe afterwards, and have a discussion with them if you can't get them on track. But in the meeting, again, it's just a respectful thing. It's like your second grade teacher would do. You just call them out and say, Adam and Steve, I know you guys are probably talking about something important that you just heard, and you're going deeper in it. If it's important for the rest of us to hear, we'd love to have you share out. If not, we'd appreciate you just bringing your focus back to everybody else. And you call it out if it's really a problem.
Right. I see what you mean, and I kind of like this too. Just a quick observation. I have a mastermind group that I belong to that meets once a week here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and we have a commitment among our group, and it's actually very simple. We're going to meet for 2 hours. The goal is for us to be focused in what we're doing here at this meeting. We understand that sometimes, because we all are entrepreneurs and we all have certain urgencies going on, like I, for instance, could be in the middle of a product launch, and Skip Weisman could call and say, hey, I just got 5 registrations. What the heck's going on here? I may need to grab that call for 2 seconds, or there may be something where, because we're not 9 to 5ers, something may need to happen at such and such a time. So the commitment we have is very simple. We keep our phones down. We don't look at our phones. We don't touch our phones. But if, let's say, for instance, I knew that I needed to take a call from Skip Weisman, and the only time he could speak with me was at 7:30, and it was right in the middle of this meeting, or I knew that I needed something from Skip, and I don't know when he's going to call back, but I actually really need his call really bad. So what we would do in that case, I would go to the group at the very beginning, and I would say, and I would ask the group's permission. I would say, I am very aware of the commitment here, and I just want to ask the group's permission. I have this one client. We're in the throes of a product launch right now, and I am badly needing his phone call. If he calls, and this shows up on my ID, I need your permission. I can stand up and take that call for 2 minutes. Is that okay? And they always say yes, but the idea is you just respect the fact that we're in the group, and it's for a good reason you're pulling away from that. And as fellow entrepreneurs, they all understand there's that occasional urgency. So I kind of like that, but that doesn't always exist.
Right, and that's asking for permission up front and being respectful and just letting everybody know what it's about, and you're not just disengaged. And I think that's important too. If there's something pressing, let people know at the beginning of the meeting that you may have to step out for a second. And I think most people would appreciate and respect that.
Great. Well, Skip, we have about 10 minutes left here, and I think this has been a fantastic conversation. I've learned a few things that I think are going to be very helpful in terms of helping me work with my own team that helps me support my business, because I have a virtual team of 5 people, and we don't really meet per se because we just all have each other's Skype and we just chat back and forth whenever we need something. But just knowing that I have these tools, I think this is going to be really good from an engagement perspective. But you've been telling us that you have something coming up here, and it's something that I know I'm very excited about, and it's possible that a few folks on this call have already gotten involved. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about that?
Sure, thanks, Adam. It's coming up in about 10 days, May 27th. We're going to be kicking it off. It's called the Communication Power for Leaders Masterclass. It's going to be really focused on three what I call the 3 levels of high-performance leadership communication. One is the level we're talking about now, which is public and group communication, and in a couple of contexts: presenting in front of the room, doing public presentations and speaking in public, running meetings, facilitating meetings, but also something that people don't focus on a lot in these situations, and that's how do we contribute from around the conference room table when there's many other people trying to get their point across. How do we get our word in, our point made? So we're going to be talking about that. And then we're going to be working on the first level of high-performance leadership communication, which is self-communication. We are the only person we communicate with 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, every year of our life. And few of us have mastered self-communication. And so everything flows from that. So we're going to spend 3 sessions focusing on self-communication that leads to high levels of self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-worth that will allow you to apply the other 2 communication levels at extremely high levels and high value. Because we need that self-communication first and foremost so that we can run meetings better, lead meetings better, present better at meetings. And then the other level of communication that's really what's most important is the one-on-one candid communication. So we're going to spend 3 teleclass sessions, 3 hours working on that, how to communicate candidly and directly and respectfully so that we can get people on board the way we need to get them on board. And so we're going to have 3 sessions on self-communication, self-leadership, self-esteem building sessions, 3 sessions on the candid one-on-one communication so that you can really influence with power, whether you have authority or you don't, and you need people to bring them around. And then the 3rd level is that the public group communication one-on-one from around the conference room table, in front of the conference room table, presenting in public. So it's going to be a really powerful program. 9 sessions over 6 weeks between Memorial Day in the United States, May 27th, and July 2nd. There's going to be heavy content with workbooks for each session, and also a lot of opportunities for one-on-one coaching on each of the teleconference calls.
I like that. And there's something I really want to pull out here, because I think that there are really two key elements to the Communication Power for Leaders Masterclass. One of the things that you're going to cover that's going to permeate through everything that you're going to be sharing is this whole thing about how to convey influence without authority to get things done. I know in a recent survey you did of your community, you found that was the #1 issue that was on people's minds, because we find ourselves in situations where we may not have a high enough rank on the organizational chart to actually tell people what to do, or our project that we're managing may not be sufficiently high in the priority list, and it may not get the same level of support or even the same level of attention that we know it deserves, or that, or what have you. But we are still going to be held 100% accountable for the results, regardless of whether we get the support we want or what have you. And if we try and say, well, I asked for this and I asked for that, you're going to have somebody turn around and say, well, stop whining and start taking responsibility. So, right. So you need that influence without authority. So folks will respect you, and they will respond to you, and they will get you what you need, and they're not going to say, well, he's just the head of that department. What do we need with him for? That's the idea is how we overcome that pushback, and we have that influence without authority, and we get things done. And the other thing is how to manage up. I remember when I was in corporate, and my supervisor told me, a big part of what I do every day is managing our director. That seems to be what I spend half my day on, and he was really good at it. So all about, you're going to share how to manage up and communicate up to get the support from your boss, to get the support from senior management. And then if we want to talk about the project management side of this, we're talking about all the stakeholders. Who has a vested interest in the project, or think they has a vested interest in the project? Who's going to start pulling you back and forth? And, when you're trying to, communicate up, and you're trying to get support from the C-suite or from the director who has 5 other managers under them and an X amount of resources, or you're the head of this project that may or may not really be viewed as a priority when it comes down to it at the senior management meetings. And at the same time, you have all these stakeholders trying to ping pong you around. So what do you do to get the support you need to get this job done? And that's going to be another key thing I know you're going to be sharing with this course. So so what I really like about this also is if you could tell us a little bit more about the amount of engagement that folks are going to have, because I know that this is not just a type of course where people are going to pick up the phone and dial in, and they're just going to listen.
No, absolutely. The way it's going to flow is there's going to be a workbook or worksheets for each of the sessions. There'll be probably 30 to 45 minutes of content in each session, and then I'm going to open up the lines to Q&A coaching, in real-time situational coaching. So what I want people to do is if they've got an issue that they're dealing with, that they're struggling with, they want help with, they're not able to push through, they can't get their attention of their boss or a key stakeholder or even a subordinate, I want them to bring that situation to the call, and we'll do real-time, in the moment coaching for them, on the call, right at the end of each content session. And then out of the 9 sessions, there's going to be 3 full open Q&A coaching calls. The other thing that we have also that we're going to do is we have a private LinkedIn discussion group. So in between calls, which they're going to be a few days apart, a week apart in some instances, in between we're going to create a community in LinkedIn where we can discuss these issues, and I'll be on there giving feedback and coaching as well. So there's going to be really 6 full weeks of intimate interaction with me to get your issues resolved, to build some skills, and to create some communication techniques both for yourself and externally verbalizing and communicating with individuals and team members and groups. That it's pretty comprehensive. It's the most comprehensive training I've ever offered. And I'm really excited about it. And over 6 weeks, you're going to really, if you invest the time and energy to do it, and come to the calls and get coaching, you're going to explode your ability to communicate with others.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that, and I really want to just emphasize for the audience, I know a number of people who are veterans of Skip Weisman's programs. I have received some mentoring from him as well, and he is very much exactly what you've experienced on this call so far. He's insightful, he listens to what you have to say, and he finds those things that you don't see on the table right in front of you. Twice you heard me say the phrase, Skip, I left that one on the table for you to see if you'd pick it up. And he picked it up instantly because he has the knowledge, he has the experience. He's been a workplace manager. He's managed projects. He knows exactly these issues. He's been involved in a number of different industries. This is somebody you really need to listen to when it comes to mastering the power of your communication in the workplace. So I also just want to mention real quick when we talk about the Communication Power for Leaders Masterclass is that you're going to is that you don't have to go anywhere, I think is the best part. This is what I really like, because if you're a project manager listening to this call, you know that you're hustling to get your PDUs. If you you may be in other places where getting continuing education credits is important. There's a lot of different reasons why you participate in courses like this. But one of the benefits, and you can tell your boss this if you need to request reimbursement for this. If you're thinking about doing this, but you want to have your company pay for it, this is part of what you tell your boss. You tell them these things. You tell them, number one, I don't have to travel anywhere. You don't have to pay for my hotel. You don't have to pay for my flight. I don't even have to take time off from work to do this. It's only going to be 1 hour a day, a total of 9 hours, and the way these courses are scheduled, chances are the sessions are going to be either on or near my lunch hour. So this is really something that I can do right while I'm right here at work. It's not even going to be a pull away from what I'm doing here every day. You don't have to give me vacation. You don't have to give me personal days. You don't have to pay for any of my expenses, because all I'm going to do is pick up the phone and dial. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to be listening online, or I'm going to be reading worksheets. And this is something that is going to give me skills that are going to help us achieve our goals as an organization. I'm going to bring a lot to this, and if there's anything that can be done to support you in that, just let us know. So, Skip, is it okay if I share the link where they can get this information?
Yeah, sure. Send them to the link. The other thing I'm excited about is there's been a number of people that participated in my trainings last year or in that recent full-day training I did up in Saskatoon that have already registered for this program, which really makes me feel proud that I've got some returning customers coming back to learn even more from me. So it's pretty cool.
Right, exactly. So the URL is actually very simple, and I just set this up a few minutes ago to make it so easy for you guys. Just simply go to, you heard us call it the Communication Power for Leaders Masterclass. Well, that's basically your domain. It's communicationpowerforleaders.com. Again, www.communicationpowerforleaders.com. You just go to that page and you'll find everything you need to know about the upcoming master class. Be aware that there are some additional bonuses. Be aware that there may be special pricing that may be time sensitive, so you want to make sure you get there now because the price may go up. Right now it's priced extremely affordably, but it could go up. So make sure that you get there as quickly as possible. And remember, everything we said about what you're going to gain from the program, it's all spelled out right there on that page about the program, communicationpowerforleaders.com. And remember all the benefits I just shared with you about why your supervisor, why your stakeholder, why the person you report to is the head of your project wants you to take this class, why it's in their best interest to have you attend this one versus the other one. So just bear in mind those things, and we'll be happy to even do a follow-up email to this to everybody who registered, just so you have those talking points right in front of you to help you get the support you need to gain this program.
Sounds great.
Okay, so
I'm looking forward to it.
So I think so are we. So we are getting near the top of the hour, and I know that a lot of folks who are listening to the call right now probably booked an hour out of their day to do it, and would like to give them a couple minutes to regroup before they go on to their next meeting or something like that. So kind of like to break off now. So if you have any final words before we call it off here, Skip, just wanted to check in with you one more time.
Yeah, Adam, first of all, I just want to say thank you for inviting me to do this call and leading it in such a great way and having such great questions for me. And I just want to reinforce the point, when it comes to meetings, you have more time than you think preparation and purpose on the front end will save you hours and hours on the back end. So invest that time in preparing and creating that purpose, and let everything else flow from there and getting clear. And if you want even more work, even more insights as to how to run effective meetings, present from in front of the room and have an impact on people and have people wanting to come to your meetings, join me in the Communication Power for Leaders Masterclass coming up in a few days.
Yep, again, communicationpowerforleaders.com. And everybody, this is Adam Homey with the Business Creators Institute and Skip Weisman, Workplace Communication Expert, signing off. Have yourself a great day, and we'll see you in the Masterclass. Take care.